What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Let me send this out real quick. And we're going to get started. Let me see what kind of tunes I can play for you. Do I have a tune? Do I have a tune? Let's see. Let's see if we have something. Trying to see if I can play something for you. One second, we're gonna get started in a second. Just about to share this out real quick. Walk out the house to the shine of the sun. Chirp of the birds and I'm feeling amazing. I dance on the curb. Piece of the hustlers making the swerves. Love to my people that struggle to eat. Ain't got a car or no shoes on their feet. Piece of the ones that still offer to go. Smile on my face, but this shit is no joke. Sometimes I feel hella bad, hella right, hella cold. Sometimes All right. Right back. We're gonna get started in 2 seconds. Alrighty. Glad you could join me on this beautiful evening. So we are going to discuss slavery in Islam. I put out a video. I'm going to drop that in there for those watching. You can follow along. I put out a video called Is Slavery Okay in Islam? Boom. Drop that there. Boom. Peace. Well, just to recap real quick. I made that video, Is Slavery Okay in Islam? Because I have been seeing for quite some time now a lot of quote unquote black scholars or quote unquote black people that are woke, speaking about religion and speaking about how all religions are made to enslave us, and all religions are man-made and they're just here to enslave and control the people, and Christianity enslaved us and so did Islam. And actually Islam, I've heard that over and over again from a variety of people. And when I started studying it, I knew it was more complicated to answer than Okay, did Islam have slaves or did Muslims have slaves? Okay, if you pose a question that way, um, it doesn't allow for context and for proper understanding. Uh, and so I said, man, how do you really approach this topic? And that's why I made the video first. Um, the compilation one of different people so that you can hear uh, the different ways Islam gets attacked. Um, and you have to be very careful, man, these days on the information you take in and what you quote unquote believe. Uh, because there's many people that look just like you and me, or just, whoever's watching, um, all sorts of people, and they can sound very knowledgeable and very well studied, and they got the Quran and they're quoting this Muslim scholar and that Muslim poet, and before you know it, you're like, oh well, I mean, this is what it says, so be very careful. Noah Ali taught us, man knows nothing by being told. You know that we need to study the source itself, and that's why I humbly advise anybody to get a Quran or two. And beyond that, I don't have any more books about Islam. But beyond just the Quran, you should get books about the history of Islam from various different scholars, if you can, or read research papers to get a better understanding. Because, especially in these days and times, man, people are very good at deceiving and misleading and giving you misinformation and half truths and stuff that sounds good. And I'm guilty of believing people before and thinking that, oh man, they're right. And then when I study a little bit more, I'm like, they was BSing. But I was just listening and believing what I was told and not doing the research and studying for myself. And so I just wanted to reiterate that before I kind of got into anything about Islam per se. Oh, this is what I did. Appreciate you tapping in. So Islam and slavery. Is Islam okay with slavery? If you haven't watched the video, the answer is no, it's not, quote unquote, okay with slavery. Well, did Muslims have slaves? Technically, yes. But the key here, if you didn't watch the video, is understanding, well, what is a quote unquote slave? If you are thinking Kunta Kinte and Toby, and you're thinking that kind of enslavement, then you're mistaken. It's not that. You have to be very careful. I forgot the term I was listening to a researcher say, but you have to be very careful when studying history to take your culture and your society's norms and what's accepted in your time and transposing that onto a time several hundred years ago. 1500 years ago. And that's what one of the brothers was, speaking on, is that if you are not well studied in history, sociology, various law, governance, if you're not well studied in all of these aspects, when you go into a topic like Islam, you can be easily misled, and somebody will say, well, Muslims had slaves too, and you think, oh man, it's not the same at all. And that may be difficult sometimes for us to hear, but we have to understand and truly get our feelings out of it and truly analyze history objectively. And when you do that, you understand that Islam came to really do away with slavery over time. It didn't come to completely, as the other Muslim scholars said, it didn't come to completely abolish slavery. And why? Because, my thinking was, well, if Allah is all powerful, how come he couldn't just, that's Prophet Muhammad, why couldn't they just? But when you understand back in that time, you realize slavery was a worldwide thing, a norm. And it was multiple ways people were being enslaved. You were sold, people were selling their children or themselves into slavery just because they were that poor and they just needed, assistance. So they said, I'll be your slave. You were captured in war. Um, and it's multiple ways. And what Islam did, born into slavery, is it did away with most of the ways, it says that it did away with all but one way that a person could become enslaved, and that was through a proper war between two nations, and the loser, of that war, then they could be enslaved. But even in that situation, if that was the case, then it came with rules and regulations and stipulations on how you were to treat that person that's enslaved. And also, it did not make that person into a slave and no longer a human being, as the institution or the system, the systematic enslavement did for our people here in the United States. And Muslims know far better than I, but basically, from my studies and from my understanding, if you became a captive of war or quote unquote slave by a Muslim, they had to feed you with the food that they ate. They had to clothe you with the clothes that they wore. They couldn't assign any job or any task for you to do that was too strenuous and just overbearing. And if it was super hard, they had to help you in the same task. What was another one? If the quote unquote slave, the prisoner of war, the captive, the servant, which is more what it was, if that person said, I want to pay and buy my way out of slavery, enslavement, this was done through the government, and it's an agreement, a contract stipulated. You pay it, and you free. This did not exist before Islam, and it doesn't exist. It didn't exist with the U.S. at all. You know what I mean? So we just have to understand that when you hear that word slave, and then also just to pause, when we as more scientists, Moors, we know that we do the studies, and the etymology on slave goes back to Slav. So, but I'm not trying to get into all of that, but just to put that on the record. I wanted to say something else that I learned about. And then also in the Quran, it was the Muslim brothers and sisters was explaining that all through the Quran and the Hadith, it was explaining, it was championing or promoting or emphasizing to emancipate quote unquote slaves. That's how you could receive blessings. That's a form of charity. Basically encouraging as many ways as possible, free to people, because no people should be enslaved to any other people. That's just, overarching what Islam was bringing. So I wanted to put that forth and put that on the table. I seen something in the chat, so let me look up real quick. Peace, 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 peace. Can you tell me something about the Arab slave trade? Well, I mean, I can attempt. What are you asking? And also, while we get to that, and also, it's very important to realize that it wasn't like when Muhammad came, he said, now I'm going to start enslaving people. And the Muslims said, as of now, we're going to start enslaving, quote unquote, black people. As again, slavery was rampant all over the globe, everywhere. Africa, yes, everywhere. All over Asia, Europe, America, everywhere. Um, So when you hear someone say, "Well, Islam was enslaved, and Islam enslaved the blacks," no, Islam didn't enslave anyone. You got to be careful when you hear people say that. There and people will, and also people will say, "Well, Islam didn't get rid of slavery. Look, it's still slaves going on today." Uh, Again, the people doing that are not representing what Islam and what Prophet Muhammad brought forth. And this is evident in the facts. If you just look into the research, into the history, through the knowledge, don't just believe some guy on YouTube because he's telling you and he shows you a PowerPoint or some slide presentation, with the cool graphics and some picture that he pulled from Google Images. Doesn't work that way. Okay, that person. Um, I just want to know the history of the Arab slave trade during the time of Bilal. If you want to know that, I would suggest you go look up, Arab history. Look up the history of the different countries um, and nations around that time. I don't have the entire history of the Arab slave trade during the time of Bilal to give to you in that sense. Um, but I can speak on Bilal in that, um, you know, that's what's so ironic when I started studying and learning about Islam from a historical perspective. Um, is that when you really look into the history, it flies in the face of any of the nonsense about, oh, the Arabs hate the blacks, and the Arabs just want to enslave us like the Christians, and like Christianity, Islam is just like, not at all. Bilal ibn Rabah. Let me double check that. Yeah, Bilal ibn Rabah. This was an Ethiopian brother who had became enslaved, and Prophet Muhammad purchased him from the person who was enslaving him, and then freed him, and that became Prophet Muhammad's like right hand dude, Ethiopian dude, dark skin, and this is not even, it's not questioned, it's not like a rumor. This is actual factual. Um, and Bilal was so respected and honored when the Muslims finally took control of Mecca and they made the first call to prayer. Man, I should know the name of that. Excuse me. Bilal ibn Rabah was one of the most trusted and loyal Sahaba companions of the Islamic prophet Muhammad. He was the first muhazzin, uh, is the person appointed at the mosque to lead and recite the call to prayer for every event of prayer. So the first call of worship that they had in Mecca, Prophet Muhammad was like, "Yo, Bilal, hey, I think you should make the call." So like the idea of this whole Arabs, Islam is racist towards the blacks, and the Muslims are just trying to enslave the blacks, and Islam is, it's not that at all. And once you dig into the history and dig into the true history of Islam, you realize just how connected uh, Islam is to Ethiopia and to African people, dark-skinned people. In this book here, I read it in in different videos, so I don't know if I'm gonna do it again. But in this book here, I'll find the page real quick. It talks about the Prophet Muhammad sending a letter to the king of Ethiopia, and that king respecting Negus, excuse me, Negus. That's what it was called. Yeah, 119. Boom. Yeah, the king of Abyssinia. That's what it was. Yes, yes. The Prophet Muhammad sent a letter to the king of Abyssinia, and the king of Abyssinia respected that. And so, the prophet, even when they were being persecuted, sent his people over to Ethiopia, Abyssinia, Habasha, to be for safe, to be safe from persecuting, because they was getting attacked and really, being viciously attacked and sometimes killed just for following the faith of Islam. And that's, even in that, we have to understand, because people will speak about Islam and Muhammad was killing people and he was going to war. But you really have to understand the history of what happened with Muhammad and the Muslims and the Islam and the movement in that time to truly understand and get better context of what was really going on. Yeah. Peace, peace and love, peace and love. The Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie respects Islam and allowed mosque in Ethiopia. That doesn't surprise me at all. But I did, speaking of that, I did want to mention something from this Quran. It was brought to us by Jew Ali. And this is the Quran, Circle 7, the Moorish Science Temple of America, the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, brought to us by Divine Prophet Noble Jew Ali. And before I started this video, I did a quick search on the word slavery and on the word servant in this Quran. And slavery or slave comes up 4 times. And I just wanted to read a couple of them because I thought it was important. The first reference of slave is in this chapter 21. It's called Marriage Instructions for Man and Wife from the Noble Prophet. It says, "Remember thou art made man's reasonable companion, not the slave of his passion. The end of thy being is not merely to gratify his loose desire, but to assist him in the toils of life, to soothe his heart with thy tenderness and recompense his care with soft endearments." So this is speaking about the relationship between man and wife, and how a wife isn't just supposed to be, a sex slave, and just there to, for the husband's pleasure whenever he feels like it. That's not how it's supposed to go down at all. And I just thought that was interesting, that was in here in reference to slave. There was another one that I wanted to, okay, and then there's a whole chapter on master and servant, which I'm going to read in just 1 second. I'll be right back. We're going to get right to that. All right, sorry about that. Boom. Whoop, pardon me. That was the other thing. Well, no, we're not gonna get to servant just yet. We're gonna come back to servant. One second. Money Boys just read that book. Word. It's a good book, I must say. Got it. Duh. I knew that. The second to last chapter, which is Egypt, the capital empire of the Dominion of Africa. And it's speaking, I'll just read it. Says, through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact that they honor not the creed and principles of their forefathers. Through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery. And I wanted to highlight that because sometimes we so-called black people, Moors, we have the perception or this belief that, we suffer slavery, and it wasn't like y'all. Everybody suffered slavery. And let's not get into this, well, my slavery was way worse than y'all slavery. It's not a battle of whose slavery was worse. You know what I'm saying? Everybody suffered slavery. And to continue on, more specifically, says that is why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them in 1774, and the word Negro, black, and colored was given to the Asiatics of America who were Moorish descent, because they honored not the principles of their mother and father, and strayed after the gods of Europe, of whom they knew nothing. Because we strayed after the gods of Europe, our ancestors, because we strayed after Christianity. Christianity was made, as it explains in here, for their earthly salvation. Islam was for our earthly and divine salvation. As it says, where are we at on that line? I should have known that off the rip. Oh, boom. Therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was prepared by their forefathers for their earthly salvation, while we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. So I wanted to put that on the record. Oh, actually, I'm about to close up. This is the most important part, is that when I was studying, it was explaining that it was less about, back then it was less about being a quote unquote slave and more about being a servant. And I said, okay, well, what does the Quran and Drew Ali, does this say anything in there to help us understand, the role or the aspect of being a servant? Does it mention anything about servants? Just looking for guidance. And what do you know? It has a whole chapter, and it's called Holy Instructions from the Prophet, Master and Servant. So if you could think of quote unquote servant as a slave, let's just take the idea of slave and just understand its servitude. And so we're a servant. Just understand that, just in this context, so we can just listen and try to hear and understand this. Repine not, O man, at the state of servitude. The state of servitude. So it's not calling you a being, not that you are a slave, or not that you are, that's all you are as a servant. At this moment, at this state that you're in is servitude. Repine not, O man, at the state of servitude. It is the appointment of Allah, and hath many advantages. It removeth thee from cares and solicitudes in life. The honor of a servant is his fidelity. His highest virtues are submission and obedience. Be patient, therefore, under the reproofs of thy master. And when he rebuke thee, answer not again. The silence of thy resignation shall not be forgotten. See, now, when I was first reading this and I was thinking like, a servant, servitude, like slave, how you just supposed to be just silent to your man? Like, I don't know. The highest virtues is submission and obedience. I don't know, man. I like when I was reading this initially, I wasn't really feeling it. I'm just being honest with you. But I kept reading, kept studying, and now it's starting to make more sense. Let me continue. Be studious of his interests, be diligent in his affairs, and faithful to the trust which he reposeth in thee. Thy time and thy labor belong unto him. Defraud him not thereof, for he payeth thee for them. Okay, well, I mean, he wasn't really getting paid as a quote unquote slave. Well, we'll get back to that. But this is where it switched though. And thou who art a master, be just to thy servant, if thou expect from him fidelity, and reasonable in thy commands, if thou expect ready obedience. The spirit of man is in him. Severity and rigor may create fear, but can never command love. Mix kindness with reproof, and reason with authority. So shall the admonitions take place in his heart, and his duty shall become his pleasure. He shall serve thee faithfully from the motive of gratitude. He shall obey thee cheerfully from the principle of love, and fail thou not in return to give his diligence and fidelity their proper reward. Gotta take a moment to sit on that one, man. So this chapter right here, it breaks down how you should be as a quote unquote servant and how you should be as a master. I said, And now when I read this with the context of understanding what the Quran brought and Prophet Muhammad, and the context of a quote unquote slave back then, more so being a servant, and then I read this, I say, this makes a little more sense. This makes a little more sense on how it can be this relationship between a master and servant. Because with Islam, the idea of a master and a servant isn't the same as we think between a master and a slave with Toby and what we was taught from the Europeans in the transatlantic slave trade, or by some of the people that try to lie about Islam and its role in slavery. Now, granted, this again, let me just be clear. There are some people who are Arab, who are calling themselves Muslim throughout centuries. There are certain people who are calling themselves this, and they are saying in the name of Islam, yes, I'm doing this and I'm enslaving people, but those people are not following Islam. Those people are doing their own thing. The same way there's people now doing their own thing with this information that was brought to us by Noble Drew Ali. Even though he warns against it in the beginning, saying, dear readers, do not falsely use these lessons. There are some people that read these lessons just like it's some people that read these lessons just like it's, well, I ain't got the Bible near me, but if I had the Bible, I'd show it up and say just like it's some people that read those lessons and misuse those. Don't confuse Islam with some people and their actions and what they're doing in the name of Islam. Don't confuse Moorish Americans and Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Divine and National Movement with some people who wear fez and say Islam and I'm a Moor and say praise Allah, and they doing their own thing. We have to be very careful, because just like then, it is now. Just like there's people that was saying that, they're doing what Prophet Muhammad was teaching, but they're doing their own thing and they're misusing the teachings. There are people right now to this day that are saying they honor Noble Drew Ali and saying, that they're here and they're representing love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, but they are not, and they're misleading and misusing these teachings. So we got to be careful. I'm sorry, I've been kind of ranting. I didn't even look at the box. Facts. This person trippy. What's up, man?
Hello, everybody.
It's time for you to go to bed.
Daddy, please no.
Go.
Please.
I seen you trying to distract me, my man.
I wasn't.
I know.
was just listening.
I know, Bam.
I wasn't even trying to distract
I know.
I just been sitting here.
I got you, man. I know. But you know what time it is, right?
Daddy, please, you started up.
Go lay down, man.
You started up this on.
Cam, thank you. Sorry about that. Bringing it back to the focus. How did I want to close this up? Yes. I encourage two things I wanted to close with. One, this is for the uniting of Asia. And I think more now than ever, Moors, Muslims here in America, Asiatics who are Muslims here in America, it is time now more than ever that we do our best to reach out to our sisters and brothers over there in Asia, in the East, our Muslim sisters and brothers, and reach out for some understanding and build bonds of unity between each other, and start understanding how our teachings connect and support each other. Because it's very key now more than ever. There is many attacks happening on Islam from many different angles, on many different levels, from people that, quote unquote Arabs, people from the East, people from the West. You got people wearing fezzes, you got people wearing turbans, you got Christians, you got Hebrew Israelites, you have all sorts of people, ex-Muslims, you have Muslim exposing YouTube. You got all sorts of attacks happening right now. And the purpose is to get you to look away from Islam, to turn you away. I'm not going to look into it. Nah, I don't believe that. Nah, they telling me it's about slavery. Nah, I'm not even going to investigate. I'm not going to do the study myself. Nah, I'm not going to believe. That's the goal. And so you have to work really hard to study for yourself and read these books and these teachings for yourself. And beyond just the Quran, that Noble Drew Ali brought, or the Quran from Prophet Muhammad, you have to study history. Study from, scholars in Europe, study from scholars in Asia, in Saudi Arabia, from America, from South America. You have to study as much as you can to get a full picture and a full understanding. But with that, I wanted to read something that I stumbled on when I just kind of like flipped open a book. Yeah. I had the page. I had the page with the little paper, but somehow I think I lost the. Oh, here we go. We coming up on it now. There we go. Boom. I'll read both, actually. Yeah. Yeah, I'll read both real quick. So this first one is from page, well, not the page, but chapter 3, Al Imran. I think it's 173 to 176. Those who responded to the call of Allah and the Messenger despite their having received an injury. For such of them as perform their duty in all respects and act righteously, there is a great reward. Those who were told, people have mustered against you, so fear them. But this is only added to their faith, and they affirmed, sufficient for us is Allah, and an excellent guardian is He. So they returned with a mighty favor from Allah and a great bounty, having suffered no harm. They followed the pleasure of Allah, and Allah is the Lord of great bounty. It is Satan who seeks to frighten his friends, so fear them not and fear me if you are believers. I'm going to read this little part right here. Let not those who advance rapidly into disbelief cause thee concern. Surely they cannot harm Allah in any way. Allah designs to assign them no portion in the hereafter, and for them there is a severe chastisement. Those who have chosen disbelief in place of belief cannot harm Allah at all. For them is a grievous punishment. Let not disbelievers imagine that our granting them respite is good for them. Our granting them respite will only cause them to increase in disobedience, and for them is a humiliating punishment. And in this last piece right here, and this is chapter 6, Al-An'am. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but this is lines 110, 111, or 110 to 114. They swear the strongest oaths by Allah that if there came to them a sign, they would surely believe therein. Say to them, surely signs are with Allah, and also that which you would make, also that which would make you understand that even when the signs come, they will not believe. We shall confound their hearts and their eyes, as they believe not in it in the first instance, and shall leave them in their transgression to wander in distraction. I need to read that sentence one more time. We shall confound their hearts and their eyes, as they believe not in it in the first instance, and shall leave them in their transgression to wander in distraction. Even if we had sent down angels to them, and the dead had spoken to them, and we had gathered before them all things face to face, they would not have believed unless Allah had so willed. Most of them behave ignorantly. In like manner have we made for every prophet enemies, rebellious ones from among men, high and low. They make evil suggestions one to another in flowery language in order to deceive. Come on, dog. Man. If thy Lord had so willed, they would have not done so. Then leave them alone and that which they fabricate. This we do so that the hearts of those who do not believe in the hereafter may be inclined towards those suggestions, and that they may be pleased therewith, and that they may experience the consequences of their conduct. That's deep, man. That's deep. The Quran. Let's see here. Let me see here. Rami, are you going to add me to this live stream, or do you need me to begin a live stream? Well, yeah, I'm not I don't know exactly how to add you to this live stream, but you know, if you are doing a live stream, I wouldn't mind I don't know, joining in on the conversation. I'm not sure what you want to talk about, but if it's dealing with Moorish science and Islam, I'm open to it. But to close up and close in one more time, Islam and slavery. I encourage you again. I dropped the link one more time. I did at the beginning. I encourage you to watch this, and also to read. Boom. I encourage you to watch that link, but also to read Islamic and Muslim history, Arab history. I encourage you to look into the history of slavery all over the world. That will give you a better understanding of what was going on before Islam came, and just how revolutionary Islam was in terms of helping to get rid of slavery. You know, we still have some ways to go. You know, we have failed. We have done some things wrong, but we're going to get right. You know what I mean? We are going to uplift humanity. We're going to love instead of hate. We're going to stand on the 5 principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We're going to praise Allah. We're not worshiping no idols. We're not following, worshiping, and praising a prophet, be it Prophet Muhammad, or Prophet Ali, Prophet Jesus. We're not worshiping man. We all understand there's just one creator. Some people call it God. Some people say Jah. Some people say Yahweh. Some people say Allah. But everywhere it is the causeless cause, the rootless root, from which all things spring. You feel me? Yes. If you have any questions, please contact me at iamhhtemple@gmail.com. Once again, iamhhtemple@gmail.com. Cool, we can dialogue. I also am invisibly disabled. I'm not sure what that means, but yeah, just reach out to me, please. Peace, Golden Lab. Those that were with me then are with me now. That's the Supreme Grand Council. Yes, the Supreme Grand Council is very important for Moorish Americans. Yeah, but I'm not really trying to get into all of that today in this video, because this one was about slavery and Islam. But very important for all Moorish Americans. We need to get that Supreme Grand Council in order and active, and for the officials in those seats of power, in the official seats, to do their job, to do their duty. Yeah, it's more than just a job. It's a duty, an obligation. With that, I say thank you. And I'm going to close out with the prayer. Yeah. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Mother of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is our protector, our guide and our salvation, by night and by day, through our holy prophets, Noble Drew Ali, Prophet Muhammad, Jesus, Confucius, Buddhists, everybody. Thank you. Much love. Keep shining, keep studying. Study all the prophets, because we honor the last line. Let me close out with that. Miss Sarah was closing out with the prayer. I'm going to close out with this. For any Muslim sisters and brothers that may have watched this and are confused, please understand the very last line of our Quran says, we honor all the true and divine prophets. So study all the true and divine prophets. Really heed the messages that all of the prophets was bringing us. And definitely was talking about love and the one true Allah. All right, I'm done.